What is up, guys, and welcome back to Paint Bravely, the podcast where you can find a little bit of encouragement, discover new ways to make your hobby more fun, and most importantly, learn to paint bravely. Now, this is a little bit of a different episode because we are recording this fairly soon after the last one. Both Brent and I are going on vacation, which is something I've been looking forward to, and I know you have. This is also episode 10. So we did it. We did a thing, some kind of thing. We hit a milestone.
We made it to episode 10. How about that?
It feels pretty good. I mean, we've been fairly consistent. We haven't missed a day yet. Of course, we're recording this, and we could certainly miss this day.
But they'll never know.
Bad.
Well,
they'll never know.
Well, they'll know. They'll figure it out eventually. Once it's
Yeah,
late,
as soon as
and then it's
episode
really
10
late,
goes on
and then
Tuesday.
it's just really, really late and never happens. They'll figure it out. But they won't be hearing us speak like this now, and that's the important thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've done podcasts before. I never have. And so when I started this, I realistically figured we'll see, because I know a lot of podcasts do end after 1, 2, 4 episodes, but
yeah,
we're at 10 now. We figured it out. We've worked it into our lives. We've worked our way into your lives, and maybe there'll even be an episode 11 and 12. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the last podcast I did, we recorded pretty much every week, and I think we did 70 or 80 episodes. It was a long one for sure. And then we decided we're a band. Why are we doing a podcast? We should be writing music. So we stopped doing a podcast.
Hey, fair enough. But still, 70, 80 episodes, that's good. We'll see if Paint Bravely can get there.
I have a feeling.
Yeah.
As long as we're not too boring.
Right.
I think we'll do all right.
That was actually something I was worried about at first when we first started talking about doing a podcast, because both of us talk slowly and are somewhere between relaxing and chill and boring. And so put the two of us together. Yeah, I figured this could be a very relaxing or a very boring podcast. But I figured something out, Casey. I've been watching a few of our old episodes on YouTube, and the trick is to put it at 1.25 speed.
Right, yeah.
Now you
Just
do that.
Us talking a little faster.
Yeah, talking a little faster, a little bit snappier, or quick comebacks and everything. That may be the way to do it. You know, you can do that on YouTube videos too, but if they've got the background music, then the background music doesn't sound quite right. The whole feeling is off. But if it's just people talking, now they're talking faster, now they're clever. Quick-witted, yeah.
Quippier,
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll have to try that. I don't tend to listen to podcasts, even just normally, on anything else. Like audiobooks sometimes, depending on the reader. Like I'll speed that up, and more especially if it's like I'm trying to gain knowledge from this and I'm trying to do it as quickly as possible. Let's just put this on double speed, and somehow I'll read the book twice as fast or listen to it.
Double speed?
Yeah,
my mind's not that fast. I can barely do 1.25.
Right. So it like I said, it depends on the person. Like if they have a really strong accent, then that can be tough. Yeah, you put that on double speed, even 1.25, like you just miss it. Like if you listen to Game of Thrones, like you might be tempted to put it on 1.25, but I guarantee you will not listen at all. You will blank out and not understand a word that's going on, because that dude's accent can get rough sometimes. That
sounds like a challenge. Okay.
Oh, all right. Who can read Game of Thrones faster?
Yep. All right, Casey. I'm going to switch things up on you and put you under pressure. What did you do this week, Casey?
Well, since the last time we talked, I actually did quite a bit. I went to my friendly local game store, picked up some paints. I also bought a board game called Mice and Mystics, which I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like an RPG in a box kind of thing. Comes with miniatures. They're little cute little mice. Pretty awesome.
Yeah. My Gen Con buddy has that game, and she showed me the miniatures, and it they're delightful. Yeah.
Right.
Cute
Delightful.
little
It's a good
critters. Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sort of in the vein of dragons and doggies, or doggies and dragons. And
No, I haven't heard of this. What's this?
well, now I'm kind of blanking too, but there are definitely like a vein. There's a vein of mini games, board games that are just animals doing Dungeons and Dragons things, and
Right.
it is delightful and wonderful. So
I'm gonna have to look into that. Dogs and dragons in the same game?
yeah,
I'm
doggies
sold.
and dragons, doggies and dungeons.
Somebody let us
Dungeons and
know down in the
doggies?
comments.
I don't know. Google will figure it out for you, but
That's a
it's
good
worth
point.
looking into. There are a lot of adorable figurines out there, and I'm glad that you got your mice there, Casey.
I'm excited. I haven't painted any of them yet, but I mean, I plan to at some point. Yeah, and I'm also just getting ready to go on vacation. Like, leaving here in a couple days. Gonna go up to a place where there's some lakes and some rivers and like just hang out. No electricity. Just, yeah, not do a thing for like a good solid week.
That sounds awesome. And the whole family enjoys that?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think my wife probably needs this vacation more than I do. But you know, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't gone fishing in a while, and definitely planning on doing that. So, yeah, it should be fun. We're bringing our nephews. They're up from San Diego. Don't get to see them too often, but they tend to stay with us in the summer for at least a month, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, we do that every year, and then we just do stuff with them. So yeah, some nice camping. Should be fun.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I was just going to give you a little bit of crap, like what is your job, Casey? Why do you need a vacation? But
yeah, that's a good point, right? Like, I'm so stressed about this YouTube gig.
yeah,
I mean, it's important to take a vacation from time to time, and like for what I do specifically, you know, making a video every single week, like that does wear on you pretty good, and having a little bit of time away from technology, especially because where I'm going, there is no electricity, and I'm pretty sure no cell phone service, so I can't, you know, check my stats and answer comments and whatever else, and yeah, it's gonna give me a chance to recharge and think of new awesome video ideas.
yeah,
So this benefits all of us.
yeah. No, absolutely. Good to recharge. And this podcast episode is gonna go out actually after you and I get back from our little vacations here. So don't take that knowledge that Casey isn't at his computer and start, you know, spamming stuff on his videos, because he's there, he's vigilant, he'll fix things right up.
I try to be. I really do. Like sometimes the comments get a little much and I can't keep up. But most of the time I find the time to go through pretty much all of them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I also have a similar job to you, Casey, where I sit around
similar,
and
yes.
paint miniatures and make videos about painting miniatures, and it is the best job that I've ever had. Certainly
100%.
not the best paying job that I've ever had, but it is the
Also true.
most fun, least stressful job that I've ever had. And in some ways, I don't even feel like I need a vacation, but I'm also recognizing that I'm kind of falling behind on things, especially comments and emails and DMs and all of the different social media platforms and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, and part of that happened with coronavirus. I used to be going to... I will not apologize for this cat, but he should be sorry for what he's doing to this microphone. But yeah, but before coronavirus, I had a co-working space that I was going to several times a week, and that was perfect for getting out of the house and like knocking out some emails and all that stuff. And here being shut in, the efficiency on a lot of those things has kind of gone down, which is, you know, too bad. It's people trying to connect with me, and you know, all of this is people who want to interact with me, and I enjoy that, but just, you know, only so many hours in the day, and my efficiency is not what it could be. So hoping that go out in the woods for a few days, reset a little bit, and again, not that I need to wash too much stress off of myself, but always good to get outside. We'll get some footage of floating around in a canoe, and that'll be good for everybody.
For everybody.
Are you going to bring any hobby with you? Are you going to be scraping mold lines off mice and mystics or doing anything like that?
Like I always go back and forth on this when I plan a vacation. Like last time I went, I brought everything, including things to shoot a video. Like I had the camera holder and all the stuff. I brought everything, and it fit all in a nice box, and I never even opened it. And I always have this preconceived notion of like, I'm going on vacation, I'm going to have all this time to do stuff. And what always happens is you get there and it's like, well, but now I'm enjoying being here and doing the things that this place has to offer. And I always, neglect my models.
Right. So I am also going to, a cabin in the woods with a lake. And the cabin I'm going to normally has electricity. I'm hoping that's the case this time. But, if it's raining or something for the couple of days that I'm there, that drastically changes the activities that I'll be doing at that cabin.
Yeah.
And if it's raining, I want to have something to hobby. Last year I went to the same place and I brought a lot of paints that time, and I ended up spending most of my time making that stupid canoe video of me painting minis or should I say pretending to paint minis in different locations out in the woods, on the lake, in a weird hunting cabin with deer head on the walls.
Right.
And I think this time I am not going to bring 3 cameras and all those paints and everything. This time I'm going to bring my worst camera to mount to the bow of a canoe to get some 4K shots of floating around a lake, and I think I'm going to bring some plastic models to assemble. I've found that to be a really good compromise on how much hobby to take with you on vacation. So you bring your clippers, you bring a blade to scrape mold lines, and you bring some plastic glue. 1, maybe 2 model kits, and it doesn't take up too much space. It could take up a lot of time if you're stuck inside with rain, and if you end up getting some assembly done, hey, there you go.
Yeah, it's not a bad way to go. I'm not anticipating any strong weather. Where I live is it's high desert, so the rain is not often. We get the occasional flash flood, thunderstorm kind of situation, but I'm expecting it to be like 105 degrees, and I'm just going to be boiling, trying to keep cool the whole time. So I might bring a kit to, like those mice or something. They do have, they have some weird assemblies to them. Some of them are kind of funky, so I might have to do that and at least get them started. That might be all right. Not too much.
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, you mentioned fishing. It's kind of like, how much bait should you buy to go fishing? How many cans of night crawlers? Are you going to go through them fast, or are you going to go through them real slow and end up fishing once and use up one worm? It's a tough question.
Yeah, you never know. It depends on the fish, doesn't it?
Depends on the fish. Yeah, it's not even up to you, really.
It's true. That is the thing. I don't usually go fishing in lakes or rivers because, like, it never seems like good enough. It's hard to explain a little bit. I'm fairly used to going fishing on the ocean, where the smallest fish you catch is like dinner, and it's bigger than any fish that you could pretty much catch in like just a standard lake or river. So it always feels just a little bit disappointing, like whenever I go fishing that's not in the ocean.
Fair enough. I always get bothered by the salt and the sand and needing to clean everything with fresh water afterwards and needing to take a shower afterwards. And I would take the side of freshwater fishing. If you're if you're worried about the fish being small, just use a really light rod and reel that bends like crazy for a half a pound fish.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get that small stuff, and it feels like such a big fish.
Yeah, you can enjoy anything. Just gotta get that right mindset. But
That's a good point.
What else is going on here? So right now I'm kind of cranking out some content because I want to launch a video before vacation, and hopefully that'll come out. We'll all know later how that went. And
yeah.
Also this week I was able to order the Creature Caster Canuck.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. It's a combination of the word Canuck and, Chimera. Yeah. Canuck Chimera. Yeah. It's
okay.
It's that beaver crossed with moose crossed with Canadian goose chimera.
Please tell me you're painting that.
I mean, eventually. I've got a huge collection, and that's going in the collection, and eventually I paint some of the stuff in my collection, so I might.
That seems like a very special piece, though, that deserves to be painted and put on your channel as soon as possible. That's not something you see every day.
Possibly. We'll see. It's it's one of the Creature Caster models that doesn't have exposed breasts or anything like that. It's got like a really angry moose with skulls all over it, but that's still PG-ish.
Yeah.
Ish. I mean, it'll give you nightmares, but I'll put it on Goobertown Hobbies. I'd be willing to do that. Sure. And let's see. That reminds me that you went on the podcast Hobby Time in the Murder Basement, and you forgot to tell me. And I am realizing that I just did the same thing to you. I went on Hobby Time in the Murder Basement, and I forgot to tell you about that last time we recorded. So check out the Heath Aldrich channel.
We didn't really mention it, huh?
Nope. We forgot again. But yeah, Heath does these interviews with different content creators, different painters, commission painters, model companies. And he's been doing a really good job of cranking out at least one a week of really interesting people other than you and I. And
that's true.
Yeah. It's a podcast that's on my subscription list now. So
yeah.
And both of us are on there. So if you are listening to this podcast and you want then you have your choice, actually. If you're listening to this podcast, but you only like one of the hosts, you can go check out the Hobby Time in the Murder Basement channel and listen to that interview, but not the other one. So
that's true.
Something to look into.
You tune one of us out.
Exactly. Just if you're wondering what this podcast would be like if you just replaced your least favorite host with someone else.
Right.
It's an interesting thought experiment. Yeah.
That's true. I really think about it that way. Yeah, and Heath's pretty good at interviewing, like better than a lot of people that I've seen. Like he keeps that conversation rolling and like always has a question like ready to go. Yeah, we're terrible at that.
Well, certainly better than either of us, but okay. That's our cue to keep this going. What else?
Exactly.
What else are we doing
today? That's my point.
Did we get through the current events here?
I think so. Just on a side note, I want to say that actually the latest podcast that Heath did is interviewing one of the head dudes over at Creature Caster.
Two of the head dudes over at Creature Caster.
Is it? I haven't seen it yet or heard it.
Okay, I watched it just the other day, and I think it was the first one of his interviews where it was 3 people on the podcast, and then very briefly it was clear that like a third major person at Creature Caster was also in the room because he just wandered by in the background of the scene and said hello real quick.
You guys doing? Yeah, so I just thought I'd throw that out there with all the Canuck Chimera talk going on.
Right.
We did get some topics to talk about. We've gotten a couple emails and obviously all the comments over at youtube.com/paintbravely the podcast. We do appreciate your comments and we really want to try and answer as many as possible. So, if you have any questions about what we do, anything pertaining to our channels or specifically painting questions, that would be a fun topic for us to talk about, then definitely leave them on the YouTube channel and we will get to them eventually. We're trying to get to as many as possible, and we have some here today. So do you want to run down this list and start to answer some awesome questions?
Sure. So this one could be really time-consuming and in-depth, depending on if we have anything useful to say, but how do you paint beyond your current skill? So I guess, how do you learn new skills and develop as a painter? Go.
Well, the way that I interpreted this question at first was like, how do you do something that makes it look like you're better than you are at painting? You know, I was kind of like racking my brain a little bit. Yeah, right? I mean, that's what I've done this whole time. And it worked out.
No, that's a legitimate skill for succeeding in anything, is fake it until you make it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For any job you do, you know, go to work, dress like you're supposed to be there, interact with people as if you know what you're doing. And over time and experience, you'll realize that you actually do know what you're doing. And there you'll be.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like that's how most things go. But yeah, that's kind of how I took that, right, at first. So I'm thinking, you know, what are the ways that you can make it look like you're a better painter than you are? Dry brushing comes to mind. That is usually a very large step for a lot of painters. When you learn to dry brush and make it look pretty good, or, you know, use that secret weapon, the super cheap makeup brush with soft bristles, like that makes you look like a better painter. When you get an airbrush and you finally start to learn how to do some blending, you know, you get one color shifting into another. Say you do that on like a big cape on some Space Marine, right? Like all of a sudden that Space Marine looks like you spent some time like hand doing that cape, or theoretically. Now the other, I guess, juxtaposed position to that is you are actually becoming a better painter because you're learning how to do things.
Sure.
So it's a difficult question is what I mean.
So your approach is to figure out like the easiest strategies that get some pretty cool results without necessarily having a big skill base there. So you got your airbrush, your contrast paints, you got your dry brush, you got your Nuln Oil.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm on board with that. Yeah, thinking about this question, I was sort of doing something similar of thinking about how do you pick up one new skill. And I think a lot of that is just picking a new skill to work on that you're actually motivated to work on, that you're going to have fun doing, that you're actually going to put some time in. And, you know, those examples you just mentioned are actually pretty good opportunities for that because they can be picked up fairly easy. They can give some awesome results, you know, on your first or second try. It can be fun to just slap some contrast paint on something, and if you have never painted with that style before, as you're doing that, you're going to be learning something. As you're dry brushing, just getting the muscle memory down of how dry does that brush need to be, and how hard do you need to press, and how do you take care of a makeup brush, and anything like that. Yeah, I think those are all good on-ramps. The times when I've set out to specifically learn a new skill, I've had some successes and some failures. So actually, back to the vacation thing, last year when I went out to the cabin by the lake and took a few things with me, what I actually took with me is a few Stormcast models and what I thought I needed to learn how to do non-metallic metal gold on the Stormcast.
Yeah, it's coming back to me now. I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, that was the original intent, and I sat down and I tried that for about half an hour, but I would say that I failed because I wasn't having fun at it. I had just these awful looking blends on a couple of shoulder pads, and then I just decided, you know what, I'm making a video about painting models in stupid places. I've got some deer heads behind me, and now I'm going to do it on a canoe. and now I'm going to do it in a hunting stand, and here's a rock, and here's a river. And so to a degree, I'd say that you can, or I say that I set myself up for failure by trying to do something that I, wasn't interested in enough doing, or it was the level of difficulty compared to how much I really wanted to spend time sitting there and doing that. It wasn't working out for me. And I think, people learn because they want to, they have to, or it falls on them. And for something in one of your hobbies, I think the strong motivator most of the time should be because you want to, or as you're doing something else fun, that knowledge kind of falls on you.
Yeah, I think you have to look at your motivations as to why you want to learn how to do something. If it's like for expediency, you want an airbrush, you want to paint your models quicker. Like it makes sense that, it's something you'd want to invest in and learn how to use because it does help with that. If you want to learn how to paint non-metallic metal because non-metallic metal is the new hotness, like you're probably not going to get as far and it's not going to feel fun and you're not going to learn how to do it. Like it has to be something that you are actually actively engaged in and wanting to do.
Right.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, the motivation thing I think is huge, especially since this is, for most of us, our hobby. Even if we're making a little bit of money off of YouTube, it's still, our hobby, and we're just going to make a video that's fun to make instead of a video that's absolutely terrible to make. So it's our hobby. And what I do want to say, though, is that I am actually starting to learn a new skill that's, commonly called a difficult skill or whatever, and that's wet blending. And like in the video I was just working on, I said, okay, I'm going to do some wet blending here. This is something I've tried a few other times in my life. It's something I've seen before. It's the technique of putting one color down in one part of a model, another color next to it, and then using often like a clean, damp brush to blend the two together. So for the model I was working on, I put purple on like the tricep of a model, blue on the bicep of a model, and then used a brush to blend them together to get that transition from purple to blue. And then it's kind of like a cool alien skin color.
Yeah.
And the reason I think this is a good example here is because, one, it looks cool. It is something I was not able to do before. Some people refer to wet blending as like an advanced technique, or certainly a technique that advanced painters use to make models look good fast. But at the same time, it's actually really fun, really straightforward, and I mean, yeah, there's some finer points there, but really easy to do. I mean, sometimes you don't even need to thin the paints that much. You just slap blue on part of the model, slap purple right next to it, take a separate brush, and just wiggle that second brush around at the border of the two. And you may not look exactly the way you thought it was going to look, but it's going to look better than, at first you thought it had any right to possibly look.
Right, yeah.
It's one of those techniques that, for some people and certainly for me, there's a higher activation barrier to get yourself to actually try it. But, it's not that much harder than putting a wash down on something or loading up an airbrush or doing the dry brush. It's one of those techniques that you can learn if you want to. And for me, I'm realizing that it's just an issue of getting up that motivation, realizing or framing it in a way where it's a fun activity to learn this new thing. And I think this is going to build up on all my other skills, and that skill of being able to blend and make transitions is something that is eventually going to let me do non-metallic metal and feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I mean, non-metallic metal is essentially just that, right? It's a lot of blending and making it look a certain way. Now, there's something interesting about wet blending that I do want to mention. Like, obviously, you put the two wet paints down together and you kind of mix them on the model, right? And then you get your blend. Something that I've noticed is that a lot of higher level painters, they do wet blending as kind of a sketch, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need some of this color here. All right, it's going to mix here. And what they're really doing is not worrying about the final result the first time they put that blend down. I think it scares off a lot of people, thinking about a technique like wet blending, because it doesn't look how you think it's going to look. But I think you need to ask yourself, like, well, why do I think it's going to look like that? Am I seeing the results in my head of somebody who spent 30 more hours after that initial wet blend? Probably. Like, your wet blends don't have to be perfect. You can come back after they're dry, which is another thing that I wanted to say, is that they look different. Your wet blends look different when they're wet. When they dry, they look more blended because the paint mats down and it actually dries together. Those pigments dry together and they do what they need to do on the model. So it's an interesting thing. Like, you just have to not be, I guess, scared of learning something new. Like, if it's not what you think it is, or like if it doesn't look like what you think it's going to look like, that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it wrong. You just need to keep going. We talked about that with like layering and stuff. You layer one bicep and you're like, holy crap, that color's way too bright, looks terrible. Well, do the rest of the model. Then you'll know if it looks good or not. You just got to follow through.
Right. Yeah, that's a really important point on some of these techniques for sure, is follow through, at least on that one model. So for this wet blending, the way you do it, both of those paints that you slap down need to not be dry yet while you're doing this blending. And so you can't paint the entire model at once. You do, the bicep and the tricep, and then you do part of the transition between the stomach and the back. And then you do the other arm, and then you do a thigh. And you have to do all those parts before you start to see what the model is actually going to look like. And a lot of times, kind of the effect of the model when you take a step back and look at the overall appearance, a lot of times that, the 3 feet view looks so much better than the 6 inches away view.
Yeah.
And that's something to always keep in mind. And especially that example of, doing the layering on muscle groups. If you're then going to layer a highlight on top of that bicep of, if the bicep was blue and the tricep was purple, and then you're going to highlight the bicep and it's going to be lighter shades of blue, just that highlighted bicep is going to look out of place and strange until you highlight all the other muscles on that model. And so there is a little bit of a need to, understand that you have to follow through and apply it to the entire model, and that you're not going to understand whether or not it worked until you do apply it to the whole model. And I gotta say, in my experience, a lot of times the overall effect is better than you think it will be. Yeah. And so if that helps, use that as a little bit of confidence to keep going and finish up what you start, at least on a single model, and see how it goes. But yeah, as my overall answer to this question of how to paint beyond your current skill, I think my best advice is to kind of think of all the skills that you've heard of before that you know that you don't know yet, and think about, of those, which seem like they might be kind of easy or kind of fun to learn. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to progress, like what seems like an achievable goal. And if all you feel comfortable doing next, or all you want to do next, is put contrast paint on a tan model, do it. See how that works. Then you can learn a new skill when you put that contrast paint on a gray model, and you're still learning. It's fun. You're getting something out of it. And just, I'm at the point right now where I'm thinking like, okay, I have 2 brushes. I can work fast enough that I can put 2 wet paints on something and squiggle them together in the middle. And right now that is sounding fun to me, and it's sounding achievable to me. And we're hoping I get good at that sometime soon, but I'm already not good, but basically able to perform the maneuver, and
Right.
and having that little bit of enjoyment is going to keep me going and hopefully get me better and better and better. And then maybe next year I'll go to the lake and learn how to paint non-metallic gold. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. We will keep up on that story. I am definitely waiting for that day. A Goobertown NMM tutorial.
I don't know if that's going to be a good video or a bad video, but someday, man, someday.
Someday. But that's the point, right? Like, someday. It doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. Like, this hobby will be with us for the long run,
Yeah.
And you don't need to peak as a painter in the next 6 months. Like, there's no reason to. Take your time with it. Pick the fun things you want to do. You will get there eventually.
Yeah. We've talked about this before on the podcast, but mini painting is one of those things that you should be able to do throughout your life until your hands or your eyes get really, really bad. You should be able to do this way longer than you can do almost any other activity. So you don't have to be in a rush. Learn the fun things that sound awesome first, and once you got those under your belt, something else is going to start to sound achievable, and you'll get there. But paint bravely. Don't be afraid to try new things. But I think it's perfectly fine advice to try the new things that sound like the most fun first. And
Yeah. Well, and honestly, the internet will still be there in 30 years. Like, people will still be posting images. You can still say, hey, check out this rad model that I painted. Which kind of brings up another point. Another question, Brent. How would you honestly critique your own work? And how do you interpret critiques from the internet?
Okay. All right, where to start on this one? So
Let's start on the your own work. How do you critique your own work first? And then we'll get into the dirty internet business.
Okay. For me, the first thing is just a gut feeling of whether I like it or not. And I consider myself lucky in that way to, normally I'm not like too harsh on myself on the technical things. Like, normally if I look at one of my models, the first thing I see is not like a really ugly edge highlight. Like, the first thing I see is not the flaws. The first thing I see is the overall look of the model. And a lot of that is, whether the colors go together, overall, like how bright and happy and fun and silly is it. And so, in general, I would say I'm very lenient on my own work. Very, in terms of whether or not this is good for honest critique and improving. But for the most part, I look at the stuff that I do and I am happy with it. Unless it's something that I stopped halfway through and I put in the pile. But if it's something that I finished, and certainly if it's something that I finished up well enough to decide to publish a video about it, at that time I was feeling more good than bad about the model. And whether that's just a lot of times that's just the overall feel of it, the colors kind of working together, having a little bit of a fun story that matches the way it's painted up. So I guess my first comment on this is that in terms of self-critique, I am normally very easy on myself, which, has pros and cons in terms of moving forward in this hobby. But that's the first thing I'll say. How about you, Casey?
I think, like, really when it comes down to it, like, I can be pretty hard on myself, because I want to reach a certain level. And I mean, it's a little bit counter to what we're saying before, like, you don't want to peak too early and all these things. But, sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are really hard on themselves when it comes down to it. And I think probably the best advice I can give is not to be. Like, you might look at a model and see something technically wrong. Like, I can pick up one of my own models and say, that blend is terrible. Or this dry brush looks dusty as hell and it looks like crap, or that edge highlight, whatever. But, like, when it comes down to those things, when it's technical issues, they're just technical issues. It's a matter of practicing, repeating those steps and getting better at that process. So like when you're critiquing yourself, you have to kind of set those things aside and say, well, here are the things that I'm still learning, and look at something else. I think like what you said, like the color combinations, does it look good if it's sitting over here, like as an overall piece? Does the model feel cohesive? Does it look like it's in the world that I said it's in, or, whatever book says it's in? If you're achieving something like that, then I think you're on the right track, and everything else is just going to follow. Those technical skills come with time. So like critiquing yourself, it's all right to be kind of hard on yourself if you're trying to improve daily. If you're like, okay, well, I got these and I missed this one. And you should probably ask yourself, well, why did I miss this piece, but not these other pieces? And that might get you to critically think about it a little bit more, or make you change the way that you're approaching a piece like that. But yeah, self-critiquing is a difficult thing if you're too hard on yourself. So,
right.
Be nice to yourself, because honestly, no one else will be.
Maybe. Yeah, the making sure that you're enjoying it is a really important part. If you look at your model and just every time you're terrible trash, I need to improve all of it, I hate all of this,
you're not going to have a good time.
You're not going to be a painter. So yeah.
Right.
Now, in terms of improving faster, like if you are willing to seek out critique and then act on it, that can be an extremely powerful tool if that's the way you want to go about your hobby. There's one person in the Goobertown Discord server in particular, A-Rock, how's it going, who is constantly posting, update photos and saying, I think I got the metal looking pretty good here. I'm worried about the texture on the cloth next, or the texture on the leather next. And what do you think I should do? Do you think this is working? And I think that's a really admirable way to go about learning, seeking out critique, asking for advice on next steps on a model, saying like, hey, what would you improve on here? If you are willing to do that, and if that doesn't, kind of ruin the fun for you, I think that's a really efficient way to get better and to improve. Now, Casey, both of us are in a situation where, whether we ask for it or not, we do get critique.
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of how do you interpret critique from the internet? This is a fair question, so I'll toss that back over to you there, Casey. How do you interpret critique from the internet?
Well, it's interesting, because there are several types of feedback that you can get online. There's the guy that says like, hey, I really like this, and there's nothing wrong with it. Mm-hmm. And that makes you feel pretty good, but it's not really helpful. It's nice to hear. And I think it does give you that kind of boost of confidence, like you're on the right track, right? And then there's the person who's like, well, I would have done it like this. And sometimes if you read into that, and really, if you're reading internet comments about your work, try and give each commenter a voice that isn't negative. I think that's really important, because if you give them a negative voice, a negative tone of voice in your head, you're going to take it personally. You're going to take it the wrong way, and there might be something good in there. Obviously, there's the super far off ones who just tell you how terrible it is. And I think, generally speaking, like, you should probably just ignore those and move on, because regardless if there's actually good information in those, like, sometimes you can openly just tell when people are just trying to be hostile. And that's just not good for, your self-esteem, your willingness to like continue to do this. It's just good to avoid those types of things. But where you find the most is, like I said, right in that middle spot, where somebody, like, you could take it wrong. You could take it in a bad way. But if you try really hard not to, you can definitely learn things from other people and get suggestions from other people that will help you. I mean, in the last year and a half that I've been doing YouTube, I know that I've improved as a painter. And I've read some real great comments and some real bad comments. But taking that advice that I'm saying, it's like, I have improved. And I'm very grateful for that. You know, sometimes it's a good day, sometimes it's a bad day. But I know that at the end of the year, I am a better painter.
Right. Now, if you are in a position where you're putting your work on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you're sharing your work and you are getting feedback, I mean, first off, value that, you know, somebody did take time out of their day to provide some sort of feedback to you. And so, the first step is, hopefully that's, the fact that they took time to do that is enough to convince you that they may have trying to be helping you out here. That go ahead and try to give the benefit of the doubt to any comment. And even if it seems a bit hostile, say, okay, is there a way that I can use this to my advantage? Let's pretend that this is a constructive criticism and see if there's anything I can learn here. So
the key is pretending that it's
constructive. Let me tell you a story about when I used to teach chemistry back in grad school. So I was a TA for many years back in university, and at the end of teaching a semester, they have you hand out teacher evaluation forms, which is a couple of multiple choice questions and then maybe a little space underneath to write some comments or whatever. And normally it would be people would give me some scores between 1 and 5, and maybe somebody would write something in the comments. And I realized that getting feedback is better than not getting feedback. So, I started telling my classes, like, okay, last semester, when those students filled out this evaluation form, out of 20 students, I got 2 comments. One comment said, pretty good, I guess. And the other comment said, looks like my cousin. And and neither of those are particularly useful to someone who is trying to cultivate feedback and learn something and get better.
Yeah.
And so I started telling, future classes that this is an example of useless feedback. And, if you're willing to and have the time, write something constructive.
Yeah. Regardless if it's like good or bad, something that has thought behind it. Like it's probably going to be helpful in that case.
Right. And of course, telling people to this story and then telling them to write something, then I got a lot of like, looks like Conan O'Brien, looks like Mike Tyson. Like, you got
a lot of jokers in there. Yeah.
Right. You got a lot of jokers, but but that's all right. But then people did start actually giving feedback, and some of it was constructive and useful. And again, if somebody is taking the time to write something about your paint job, something about your model, assume that they have something useful to say. Even if they're being kind of an a-hole, they do have a different pair of eyes than you do. They're looking at it from a different viewpoint. Maybe something they're seeing is useful.
Yeah.
And I guess there's some parts of the internet where you can just ignore, but again, decide.
There are some dark places on the internet, Brent. Some really dark places that you just don't want to go. And we found that out the other day, kind of in an interesting, difficult way. And I think we've both been doing this long enough that, we don't really have like a chip on our shoulder. We're not so much bothered by hateful comments these days. But I mean, occasionally you get a pretty nasty one. But yeah, we were, so both Brent and I are in a Discord group. I mean, we're in several Discord groups, but one that we share with other people. It was brought
one
to
of the one of the members who will remain nameless shared a particular Well, let's call it a 4chan post. And
let's call it that. Let's call it what it is. A 4chan post.
A 4chan post which shall remain
community.
nameless. And this was a long post, and
it was, yeah.
These lads just really made the rounds of all of the people painting miniatures on YouTube.
Yeah.
And
like didn't really miss anybody. They just went down the list.
It really didn't miss anybody. The conversation just kind of wandered from hating on one person for a set of reasons to hating on somebody else for a set of reasons. And man, just when you thought you were safe, you'd pop back up again. Just when they thought you were, just when you thought they were done with you, like there would be your name again. And
yeah.
So we had kind of an interesting little afternoon read there of all sitting alone in our rooms reading this dark stuff.
It's super dark.
Yeah. There's bad people out there. There are fundamentally unhappy people out there who don't want you to be happy either. A lot of them spend their time on the internet posting on nerd things. Don't worry about it. Not worth it.
Yeah, there are just some things that aren't worth dealing with. They aren't worth looking into. They aren't certainly worth responding to. If you get a crap comment, like, don't respond. They took the time out to say something to you, but that doesn't mean that you have to respond to that. And I think that's something that people miss. Like, there are trolls out there trying to get in fights, right, on purpose. Just ignore it. It's no big deal. Now, the one big takeaway from this 4chan post is that literally all of the painters on YouTube are terrible people and cannot paint to save their lives. Now, you put all that together and you put everybody in the same boat. And it's kind of that whole thing of like, if everyone's special, then no one is. Like, I think what are you trying to say, guys?
That is a great way to look at it, yeah. And I guess the one other comment I'll put on here is, sometimes when I am reading through YouTube comments and someone will say, the way you should have painted that red is this. Okay, one, back off, assume that they are giving it in a helpful advice. Two, like, I've gotten a lot of really interesting and many of them useful pieces of advice from the comment section. And three, try to remember what you said in that video. A lot of us YouTube folks will put a line like, make sure to leave a comment about how you would have painted red in this situation.
Right, exactly.
And
don't forget that.
Yeah, that's actually something, because I've had a lot of times where, like, I've read a comment and I've, like, just a spark of anger before I calm down. And I'm like, wait, I literally asked people to leave comments on this to feed the algorithm, and I should be happy that they literally did what I told them to do. And I said, please make sure to tell me how you would have done this, and not just immediately. So again, that first step of, whenever you possibly can, give people the benefit of the doubt. Give people the assumption that they are acting in good faith. Give them the assumption that they have something useful and knowledgeable to say, and then read the comment and then see if there's any way you can file that away for later to get some use out of. But
yeah. On a side note, my wife just brought me lunch.
Nice. Would you like to take a break?
No. I just thought that would be fun to share.
Well, it looks delicious, Casey.
I'm looking over here on the camera, and people might be wondering what's going on, is all. If you watch this on the youtube.com/paintbravely, the podcast.
Yeah,
the video feed
if you do that, you've been seeing me deal with a cat this whole time. It's Gordon today. Gordon has a very loud purr. He's wandered into the microphone a couple of times. He keeps jumping up on the desk, and I got a phone call that I hung up on a few seconds ago. We're working here.
We are. This is only episode 10. We're still working out all those kinks. Yeah. Well, I think we got that question down pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm content with that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Try to be open-minded. Read the critique. Think about using it in the future. And in terms of kind of seeking out critique, taking those progress pictures, putting them out there. There's a lot of good Facebook groups. Certainly just throw them on Instagram. The community is good. There's a lot of people out there looking to connect, looking to see what other people are doing in terms of painting, thinking about how to achieve what you just did, thinking about how to improve upon what you just did. So if you would like critique for your work, you can normally get it. Seek out those groups and put yourself out there, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean I think that's a big part of it, just putting yourself out there. You're going to get the good stuff, you're going to get the bad stuff, but you put yourself out there and you know that you're trying to improve. And as long as you have that mentality, I think that, continuing to get feedback and acting on those things, like, you will improve and it'll be good. So why don't we move on to some questions? I'm going to throw you the first one here, Brent.
Okay.
So this comes from DA over on the comment section of the YouTube channel. Let's see here. So we both talk about sealing our paint job. How do you do that? Airbrush, or can you use a rattle can like matte finish?
Yes.
Yeah. So what is that and what does it do?
So I normally use my airbrush for stuff like that when I can, because it's reliable and it doesn't smell and it's convenient. So when I seal a model, I normally have a couple of bottles of Vallejo varnish. So the Vallejo has a gloss varnish, satin varnish, matte varnish. They come in the same dropper bottles as anything else, or you can get a larger container. But those go right into the airbrush. Normally I use a little bit of airbrush thinner in there. And I do try to work quickly, because maybe a little bit more so than regular paint, that seems to jam up the airbrush eventually. So I do try to work quickly, but if you just want a nice hard glossy seal, gloss varnish, then you can either matte that down with matte, or you can go satin, which is in between. I don't know. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. I just sounded like an idiot right there. But yeah, if you want gloss, use gloss. The other thing,
perfect sense, Brett.
The other thing to say about all that is those bottles of Vallejo matte or gloss varnish, you can brush on. You're not going to get as thin and even a coat as if you use an airbrush, but anything that comes in one of those dropper bottles, you can absolutely brush on. But when I drop a comment about sealing a model, that normally means I go downstairs, I load up my airbrush with gloss varnish or matte varnish or whatever, give it a quick spray all over. But you certainly could use a rattle can, any clear lacquer, gloss lacquer, anything from the hardware store, or, Mod Podge brand sells it, Testers sells this stuff. And I will say that anytime I pick up a rattle can, I'm a little bit nervous. I am not great at using rattle cans. It totally depends on the weather outside, on how full that thing is, on the temperature it was stored at, all that stuff. And so there's a little more variation in using a rattle can than just using your airbrush at 70 degrees inside your house. But
I think that I do this almost every single time I paint a model. At some point, I'm varnishing that model with something. And that does a couple things. Like, usually if you're using a lot of oils or heavy washes or something, you want to throw that gloss varnish down so that, that stuff just slides around the model and goes into the places that you want it to go. It's very useful. And like you said, the Vallejo stuff works really well through the airbrush. I do have lots of bottles of that stuff, and it's great. Personally, I prefer Testers. They have a gloss and then this like lusterless flat. And for me, that seems to work better than the stuff through the airbrush. It's quicker. It doesn't have any cloudiness to it. Like, the Vallejo stuff can get kind of cloudy sometimes. I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
So sometimes with matte varnish from any brand, especially if you put down too much, it gets a little bit cloudy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess for, finding the brands that you like and figuring out how to apply it in the best way, this is one of those times where it really is useful to have a test model or to just do a single model and not do a whole squad at once. This is a time to test some things out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, because depending on where you are
Yeah.
in the world, what kind of humidity even is going on, like you throw down something out of a rattle can, you might get it cloudy. If you tried it inside with the airbrush, then it'll be fine, that kind of thing. So definitely test it out.
Yeah. And I guess the last thing is, like Casey was saying, you can varnish at any point during a paint job. And like if you put down a gloss varnish, that will affect, how the next layer of wash and stuff goes over. But at any time, you can kind of protect the layers that you already have down. So a lot of times when we're putting down really thin layers of inks or something like that, those can be fragile. Like if we put down a really thin layer of ink and then an hour later when we think it's dry, we come back in with some Nuln oil or something like that, that can ruin everything.
It'll rip it up.
Or it can kind of re-dissolve that last layer and move it around and change what was there. So especially if you're doing light airbrushed layers of something or other, it's a good standard procedure to put a coat of satin on top afterwards before you move on to painting the next section. And you can, at any point during your paint job, you can protect what's already there or change the sheen with a layer of varnish. And I would encourage you to experiment with that and see what you like.
Yeah. And if you're curious about diving a little deeper into this, Vince Venturella has a hobby cheating video on varnishes that goes pretty in depth, talking a lot about different uses, different kinds, different brands. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you're interested in learning a little bit more about varnishing.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you. No, Casey, you stop reading the questions. I got a question for you. Okay, this we'll read this name. This is from Table Ready Gaming Dave.
Go, Dave, go.
All right. Let me throw a question into the hat. What's one franchise you would like to see turn into a tabletop skirmish war game that currently isn't?
I've been thinking about this, and I think I've really only come up with like one halfway decent answer, because most of the things that you would think would be some kind of a skirmish game kind of have been turned into one, right? Like you got your Gaslands for your Hot Wheels car combat, your Warhammers for your fantasy battles and all this. Lord of the Rings is already a thing. So, I was trying to think like, well, what else would there be? The only thing that I can think of is that there isn't an official Pokemon skirmish game.
Oh,
and
my
there
God,
probably should be.
That's incredible. That's awesome. Yeah, I changed my answer. I was going to say Star Trek, but there's kind of something for Star Trek.
Oh, there is,
no,
though.
You're right, Casey. Pokemon is the correct answer. You got it.
This is the correct one. WizKids makes a HeroClix style Star Trek game, and it's supposed to be pretty fun.
Okay. Yeah, my answer was garbage. I'm going to pick Digimon. I don't know.
Yeah. I take my answer back. I'd much rather have a Digimon.
Okay, I'm going with Pokemon then. No, that's awesome. For anyone who could get the rights for a somewhat reasonable cost, you have basically infinite minis to make. You've got a fan base that'll love them. There's the genius built-in gotta catch 'em all aspect of that,
and all those models.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That's a great one.
I would actually be into that if it had some like decent rules in a skirmish around it.
Yeah.
You got little cards for each of your mons there, and you running around doing stuff like that. That could be pretty fun. You got that like Pokeball recall kind of thing. You can kind of like take, say, an injured one out and throw another one down that just pops up in its place, and there's shifting around a small board. It could be really cool, and I'm surprised that that's not a thing. Yeah.
Man, you have this all figured out. I was just thinking about the collecting the models. Like I wasn't even thinking about the game itself, but yeah, like those original Game Boy games, the idea was you picked like a team of 6 Pokemon to wander
Something
around
like
with
that.
you.
It's
And
definite,
that's perfect for a skirmish game. That's
Exactly.
absolutely perfect. You nailed it.
Yeah. So I don't know who we need to contact. We only want like 60%. That's all. For the idea.
Man, you got a get rich quick scheme there of Pokemon. Man.
100%. Yeah. Just got to own that somehow.
You know, I actually downloaded Pokemon Go again for my phone. I hadn't loaded that up in a couple of years, but I just got a new cell phone, and it works way better on a modern cell phone, actually.
100%, yes.
And
not like when it started.
Yeah, and the battery usage seems reasonable now. I can presumably play for more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time without getting a recharge, you know?
Right, carrying that battery pack around in your pocket.
Those were the days.
Ooh, they were. I played a lot of that. And I played with friends, and then like my wife was into it. I got some of my family members into it. Like we'd go on vacation and stuff, and we'd play in some town. But it was really nice because it's like, I mean, we were playing a game together, but then we were also walking around whatever town we were in and kind of exploring. And that was a really unique kind of way to do that. I actually really appreciate that game for those kinds of moments.
Yeah.
Don't play it much often anymore, but
I agree. I was doing that with a friend also. It came out right at a time when I was living in Boston for a little while. And that game, the Pokestops and where the Pokemon actually are is very much dependent on having a population around you. So
100%, yeah.
That game is way more fun to play in a city or at least like a fairly packed suburb than it is just the wide open.
You
don't get free Pokeballs if you're out in the country. You might end up walking into one really, really common Pokemon out in the country, but where you find all the rare Pokemon and where you find all the items and everything, that's just from walking around in a city. So, those were the days. But no, you were right with Pokemon. Okay, thank you for the question, Dave.
That was a good question, Dave.
Okay.
You want me to read you this next? Is it my turn to read again, or do you want to read this?
It is, but I always like reading the question first so that I have time to think about my answer or change it if your answer is better. So
it's a good point. Yeah, Digimon it is.
Okay, so this next question is talking about subassemblies. So SC asked us a question about subassemblies of, should you assemble the entire model and then try to paint, or paint it in bits and then put it together later? And this is an age-old question, and I think it is worth exploring how you feel about it, Casey.
I think there's a couple ways to look at it. So there are some people that think, yes, put everything into subassemblies because your paint job is going to look better. But obviously, then there's the question of gluing it all back together after you've painted it. Well, you might overspill on the glue. You're going to ruin that a little bit. Maybe, specifically, say you're working on a Space Marine, you glue the arm on and your highlight is now in the wrong place because the arm only goes on a certain way, right? Like subassemblies can work. They really can, because if you're using different techniques, if you're using airbrushes, then you're going to have better access. On the other side of that, it's, well, why are you painting things that you literally cannot see after you've assembled the model? Like, you've just wasted time. And I think that's a perfectly valid point too. Personally, I think it falls somewhere right in the middle. For the most part, put your models together. And if there's some weird piece that, you're planning on doing something with, then you should leave that piece off. Heads are a good example. If you want to paint the head a different color than the rest of the body, say you have a helmet, then it's not a bad idea to leave that off and do it separately. And then, you got your little tiny glue dot right under the neck that no one's going to see. You really aren't going to screw that up. And that can look better. So I'm usually the kind of person that puts most of the model together and then leaves like a piece off. So I like that.
Yeah, I can't disagree with much there. So for you and I, Casey, we're also normally filming the process of painting. Yeah. And I gotta say, when a model is, in 5 different pieces, that's a boring video. It's hard to see, where progress is being made.
Yeah.
I guess if you're doing, for all of this, a Space Marine is a pretty good example. For like the problem bits, a lot of times it's the bolter held in front of the chest, and then how do you paint the eagle that's on the chest, and how do you paint the other side of the bolter? And to a point, you can see both of those areas if you're looking for them when you're looking at a model. And my solution is, for me, the lesser of two evils is to put the thing together and to get the paintbrush in as far as it can go. And to a point, like what we talked about last time, is if you're priming with a darker color anyway, kind of having black in between the bolter and the chest is normally harder to see than if there's some white primer stuck in, deep in there.
Yeah.
So there's the fact that, if you were to do that subassembly, you'd be able to paint the chest easier. You'd be able to paint the inside of the bolter easier. And then when you're putting things together, then the problem is making sure that you don't get weird glue smudges. The actual act of painting, I don't buy the why paint what you can't see anyway. If it's in subassemblies, all of that painting is going to go way faster than if you're trying to snake your brush in there and get the visible bits. Subassembly, the actual painting, 100% faster, definitely. Yeah. Unless you're painting like the control panels inside of a rhino that you're going to glue together or something like that.
Yeah.
But
you don't want to be reaching your brush in through that hatch.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Just don't paint that. You don't need to paint that. That's up to you, but you don't need to.
If anything, paint it black and then throw a dry brush of like silver and just wiggle it around inside that tank, and you're probably
wiggle it around fine. In there. Yeah, point the spray can inside the tank.
Right. Just get a little spritz, you'll be fine.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That's good. But yeah, then for the subassembly thing, I'm worried about the glue smudges when you're putting things together. If you're working with a plastic model, I so much prefer plastic cement than super glue. And if you're doing things in bits, then you have to make sure that you're, guarding enough of the plastic or scraping paint off plastic so that you can glue it together with plastic glue, or you're using super glue, which is messy and brittle and bubbles in weird ways, and that's going to be leaking out of the armpits if you're not careful, and that's going to make the problem you had on the chest look like nothing. So
exactly.
And like I said, the other reason is we're painting these things on camera, and then the final reason why I think it's useful to assemble everything and then paint is if you're going to start to get fancy with highlighting and shadows and stuff like that, or even if you're just doing an all-over dry brush on everything, having everything where it is supposed to be makes those shadows and highlights make more sense. So if you assemble the whole model and then do like a top-down dry brush, the arm is at the right angle, the shoulder is where it's supposed to be, both to catch the highlight in the right way and then also to protect the thigh from getting a highlight, So yes, I am more in the, if at all possible, build the model and then paint the model. But I think like you said, the head is a notable exception. If we're going with the Space Marine example, a lot of times the head or the neck at least is kind of recessed in some armor there.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to even paint the head, or at least very hard to paint the neck when it's assembled. And so sometimes it's just easier to leave that off and do it separately. Or if you have a bit that is definitely going to be a different color from everything else, again, Space Marines, like if you have a shoulder pad that is just a different color from the rest of the model, then you can think about leaving that piece off and painting that separately, doing a different primer scheme on it or whatever. But I was just going to say there is no perfect answer here. So this question of, man, there's a problem painting in sub-assemblies, but there's also a problem of assembling everything and then trying to paint. They both have pros and cons. Do what you want to do. I have found that I prefer to deal with the set of problems that comes with assembling everything first and then painting.
Yeah, I think those tend to be easier to deal with types of problems. And coming back to the question a little bit, they were asking, how does this specifically deal, or how do you deal with night haunt models? That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Well, Casey, I have never painted a night haunt model, so I'm turning this right back around on you.
I painted a fair few.
I know you have.
Yeah, not well, some of them, but fully assembled, because for the most part, you do want there to be a consistency in where that paint is going. So,
yeah,
if you're trying to paint with an airbrush, you don't want like some part of the ghost to then look totally different than the part it's attached to.
Right. Yeah, even if you're painting with washes, when the Night Haunt first came out, they had their like early contrast paints, their technical paints that were just the blue and green for ghosty bits. And, if you're painting with washes and you go a little bit heavier on some bits than others, when you put them together, they won't look quite right. So, yeah, that goes to having the whole model together, whether you're doing airbrush or dry brush or washes. It can make a difference. You get that uniform look that, that piece was supposed to be in that place and was painted as if it was supposed to be in that place. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say that that does that for that question. Sub-assemblies. Right in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, we cranked right through it. Casey and I are both excited to go on vacation here, I guess.
I'm
true. Just about to pack up my hobby kit and get ready. I've got a box of the older Necrons that I'm gonna paint. I'm thinking about getting some test schemes going just in case I buy that Indomitus.
Indomitus?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Are you getting that box?
No.
No.
I don't know.
9th edition 40K for you, Casey?
I don't know. Like I said, I bought 8th edition. I painted the models in that box. And then I started a YouTube channel, and I literally haven't even played 8th edition. Haven't even played it. Book's been opened maybe twice. So
fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, I'm super, like, I want to, I want to play 40K. I want to get into it. Unfortunately, unless something changes drastically in the next 6 months or so, I have a feeling that I'm not going to be able to just go to my local store and learn how to play 9th edition 40K. It's a real bad time for an edition to come out.
It really is. Just stay quarantined until 10th edition, I guess. You're going to wait this one out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I've heard, that there's always that rumor that every other edition is a crap edition.
Oh, you think this one?
Well, yeah, supposedly. So it's like all the, what is it, the even number ones or the good ones?
No, that's for Star Trek movies. No, you got it wrong.
Maybe this is just a thing in general. Like, they fix all the problems from the last one after they screwed it up with the kind of in the middle one. Right? So, like, first one, wow, this is a fantastic game. Second one, well, it's a slight improvement, but I don't think it's great. Third one, maybe this is the opposite then. Maybe it's the odd number ones.
Oh, so you're saying that you like the odd numbers. You should buy this. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe I just screwed myself with 8th edition and should have just waited till 9th.
Get your pre-order in now. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good call. I might have to do that.
Yeah. And then there's not exactly drama, but there was the fun realization that GW sent some YouTube people a big Indomitus box and never bothered to email other people. And which group are you in, Casey?
You're so inconsistent. Well, I have an Indomitus box, so I don't know what you're talking about.
You son of a... No. The reason I am not buying an Indomitus box is because
I have it behind me, and I signed like an agreement to not show that.
To not show the box or ever assemble the models.
I got that NDA, yeah. Or ever assemble the models. So, yeah, it's really useless to me. I don't even know. I mean, obviously, if they contacted me, I'd be like, I will gladly.
I signed this paper that says it stays under my bed forever.
Literally, and that's probably what'll happen. Like, I have no good reason to have GW send me anything.
Right.
Yeah, which is fine by me.
They sent it to eBay, and then eBay sent it to you.
That could work. I mean, regardless, I would, if I was going to buy it, I'd buy it on eBay.
Sure.
Because that might give me an opportunity to spin that somehow to be able to paint new models. I did that with the Gloom Spike Gits. It worked out great.
Yeah, you're really tying yourself down to this whole eBay thing, man.
Yeah, I know. It's like it's an interesting, like, it's really fun on one hand because it's limiting to a point where, like, I am a niche of a niche. At the same time, like, yeah, I'm not getting any work done on things that I actually want personally, you know. But hey,
I mean, you can do that thing of just buying, you know, all your new products on eBay just to get around that barrier you've put in front of yourself. Or
I do feel like it's self-imposed a little bit, but you know, there are the occasional comments of like, hey, this isn't like what you said it is. And then I have to be like, well, it is because of these reasons.
Yeah.
And that just feels bad.
Look, you can either buy everything on eBay or you can just say that you bought everything on eBay, or
that's true.
You wouldn't do that though.
Well, I've had many suggestions of, oh, well, yeah, I know this isn't used or anything. Do you want me to just put it together and like prime it like shit and send it to you? I'm like, no.
Yeah. Do you want me to buy an Indomitus box and put it on eBay, Casey? Like,
only if you partially assemble and paint it first. Then yes, 100%.
That could be both of our worst videos that we've ever made.
Like you partially assembled.
I bought a $200 box, assembled it as poorly as possible, half primed it, threw some weathering powder at it, and sold it on eBay for $74 plus shipping.
Right. Well, and the thing that would happen, of course, is that auction would get sniped right at the end, and neither of us would end up with it. Someone else would. That
actually would be pretty funny. It wouldn't be a very good YouTube video, but I think it'd give us something to talk about on here for a while. I'm not doing it, but
no.
We could.
You know what? I just remembered something that I should have mentioned. I legitimately found a very crappy looking, but also nice, full corn army that I just bought on eBay like the other day, and I actually got video of me buying it, which was really cool.
You got the countdown going and everything.
Oh yeah.
Are you doing an auto snipe program, or were you awake and alert and ready for that?
It was like in the middle of the afternoon, so no need for any bots to do my sniping for me.
Set up OBS to record your stream. Just crack your knuckles, sit there, watch the timer countdown. So did you have a face cam on you while you were doing this? Did you get a reaction shot to winning the...
So I should. Actually, the newest iPhone that I do not have, you can record like your front camera and your back camera at the same time, get the face reaction of what's going on. So I'm kind of thinking maybe, that might be a thing to do. Like I'm scrolling through eBay and I got like a face cam and I got the other thing going, like. But I haven't upgraded to that iPhone yet, so someday we'll get there. But I thought it was pretty cool, and so I already have a whole other army that's like in need of rescue, and it's not bad. Like there's some good models in it, and I got it for really cheap. Like,
wow, I'm really interested. Like, how cheap? How many points? Like, what are we talking about here?
I think it's not quite 2,000 points.
Okay.
So I got the auction for straight up $100.
Nice.
Right. And there's only one picture on it, and it's a terrible picture. So I know people aren't paying attention, right? But in the description, it goes, okay, well, already there are 55 blood letters, assembled and partially painted blood letters. And then there are like, 20? What are the blood letters that ride those like iron pigs or whatever? You know what I'm talking about?
I'm the wrong person to ask about this, but
okay. Well, it's a bunch of like red demons riding basically like mounts that are all armored, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are like 20 of those. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. There's like blood warriors, which are pretty great, but not the ones from the starter box. It's like the multi-kit or the multi-part kit one. So it's like you add it all up, they're like $300 in army stuff here. And it's like, yeah, it's just kind of badly painted and put together, but it's like perfect opportunity to have an entire corn army for $100.
Yeah, see, and that's the awesome stuff on your channel. That's what you gotta be doing more of, the sweet deals and painting a whole army of corn demons. But that's another one you should be able to paint quickly. Maybe not the warriors, but like the demons and the demon cavalry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to doing that specifically because like I'm getting ready to do this like super long recording process, 24 hours or more or whatever until I pass out. I'm kind of hoping I pass out to paint this Stormcast army. Yeah, I was thinking about it. Like if I passed out on camera, that would make the video way better. So I'm going to try that.
Yeah, legally, I cannot give you any advice in this situation. Yeah.
I know, right? Don't stay up multiple nights in a row. Like, that's stupid. But I'm going to do that.
Don't do that.
I'm going to do that.
You should go to sleep every day, Casey.
You should.
Yeah. At least once.
I'm not going to. Yeah.
Man, I am excited for that new army. I'm liking this direction of you just, one model at a time. No, one army at a time. Let's do it. I like that.
Yeah, from now on, one army a week. That's going to be how I'm gonna push those numbers. Yeah, I may have bitten off a little more than I could chew. It's like, I'm trying to figure out how to paint more than one model. So let's do 40 or 50.
Mm-hmm.
Or in this case, it's like 90 models for $100.
Yeah, I'm gearing up to do a little more army painting myself. I need to use this coronavirus time where I don't have Mark and Alex constantly telling me that I need to be painting models to play games with them.
Person. They can't hound you.
Yeah, it's been a nice little vacation in its own way from my close friends telling me that they want to play games with me and that they want me to paint my army and to stop painting random one-off models for YouTube and to paint my damn army,
Do they listen to this podcast, Brent?
I think they might have listened to like a couple of episodes, but
all right.
Mark, Alex, at us if you're offended and paint your army, like.
Yeah. Just saying, if they're such good close friends, like, why aren't they helping you out, Brent?
Well, maybe they'll listen to the start of this and then they'll put the podcast on 1.25x and they'll make it this far into the podcast. Yeah. And, no, to be fair, I think some of these, they might help me out. I don't know if Mark would. I think Alex would if I asked him, but I'm so particular about the way I want to be the one to paint my army. I don't want someone else to paint my army, no matter how good they are. Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, I know that feeling for sure. Like, I've never actually commissioned anything. And if I get something from eBay, like, I'm going to repaint it, even if it sucks. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I get that people like getting models that are painted and like you literally just don't even have to think about it. You can just go for it. I'm just not that guy, and I don't think you are either.
No, I got to repaint it. Actually, not too long ago, I took a ton of pictures of a partial army that I'm stripping. I had some Space Marines, maybe like 800 points of Space Marines, but the previous owner had done, wouldn't say a good job painting them, but they had painted them all. It was a consistent paint scheme. Black and yellow, it looked okay. Their basing was pretty good at least. And, of course, I'm never going to use them. They don't match with anything. I'm going to strip them and redo them eventually. But, I had this thing inside me like, oh, somebody painted this. Like they put time into this. And so I had to go and take like a bazillion pictures to preserve the look of that army, to hold it in memory before then I go and just dunk it into super clean. And
I think so far I haven't run into anything that was like, we'll say lovingly painted. Because obviously you get those things, like you see them online. It's like, oh, I painted this and I love this army or whatever. And it's like, it's a garbage paint job or whatever. But usually people don't sell the things that they actually like on eBay. It's not how it works.
Right.
So I have no qualms with stripping off an entire army's worth of paint from someone who wants to sell an army for $100.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm rooting for you. I hope that actually comes in the mail. I hope it's as good as you think it is. I hope it's not...
Me too. Like I said, one picture.
Hope it's not epic scale or anything like that. Yeah.
It certainly didn't seem like it. Like, I mean, hey, Epic's supposed to be coming back, right? So maybe I'll get lucky.
Yeah.
Like, I've only ever done that once.
Well, good. Okay, the future is bright. I think we're ready to wrap it up here. We've both got a pack for a vacation, and by the time you hear this podcast, Casey and I will be back and refreshed, and
and hopefully the podcast will come out on time.
Army. I don't know.
Yeah, supposedly should be here any time. Hoping sooner than later. So, hey, if it gets here before I have to leave on vacation, maybe I will be taking some hobby with me and just leaving a bunch of models in bags of LA's Totally Awesome for like a week.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds good. And on that note, thank you again for joining us on another episode of Paint Bravely. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us out by leaving us a review on iTunes, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and sharing this message with your hobby friends. As always, we appreciate each and every one of you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.